Welcome to the Financial Freedom Secrets Show. This is your host, Jackson Milan, the Wealth Mentor, helping business owners create financial freedom faster by mastering the language of money. Want to see how well you're tracking towards financial freedom? Complete our 40-point financial performance scorecard at wealthhealthcheck.com.au. That's wealthhealthcheck.com.au. The average score for most business owners is 18 out of 40. So complete the scorecard now and see how well you're tracking towards financial freedom. G'day guys, this is Jackson Milan, the Wealth Mentor, and we're here for another episode of the Financial Freedom Secrets Show. And I have another new friend of mine, Kristy-Lee Billett, who is a HR and recruitment expert. And we actually had the pleasure of having her present to our private clients yesterday, and it was an absolute phenomenal session. If you are a private client listening to this episode and you didn't check out that masterclass, make sure that you jump into the portal to go and get it. And if you're not quite a client yet, then we can have a conversation afterwards if you want to get access to all of this juicy stuff. But we really did a deep dive into the common pitfalls and mistakes that small business owners make when it comes to growing and scaling a team. And quite frankly, leads most of us to say, I can't find good people, I can't grow and scale, and end up becoming the biggest bottleneck in your business dealing with all of this HR stuff. So I wanted to get Kristy-Lee on the podcast, share her genius once again, and deliver a ton of value. So mate, thanks for joining us. How you doing?
Jackson, thanks so much for having me. It's great to be here with you.
I'm sure you're sick of me because I know I'm going to be on your podcast straight after this.
Yes, lots of chats this week, you and I.
I love it. It's fantastic. So for those who don't know you, tell us a little bit about your background and your story, mate.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I have had my business since 2006. I fell into the world of recruitment at a very young age, straight out of uni. If someone asked me as a youngster whether I would work in HR and recruitment, it would have been a firm hell no for me. I was on the path of studying psychology, forensic psychology, and fell into the world of recruitment straight out of uni and actually really enjoyed it and discovered that everything I'd learned in psychology was quite handy in that particular career path. So did that for a period of time. And as I said, started my own business in 2006, which was a bespoke recruitment agency, but really quickly discovered that we could find people the best talent, but if all the things they had in place beyond that were broken or non-existent, really it was never going to work out. So have been working with business owners since then to really get the whole HR aspect sorted for them, really working with them on not only finding the right people, but then how to leverage the best in those people and build teams that are going to give those business owners a sense of freedom from their business and not working 80 hours a week and feeling like the business owns their life. So that's what I do these days.
Makes so much sense. And the interesting thing is that for most of our clients who are multi-six-figure, seven-figure business owners, they've got teams between kind of 5 and 20. They say they don't like management, right? They didn't get into business to manage people, yet they're still taking on this responsibility and doing all of these things, to put it bluntly, half-assed.
Yep.
Is that typical in the types of small businesses that you work with prior to working with you? Is that typically the state of play?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say that most of the business owners I start working with would say that people management is the number one thing they hate in their business. They don't enjoy it. And I think it comes from a few places, largely because often when we get into business, generally as entrepreneurs, we may or may not be control freaks and like things done a certain way and have a particular level of expectation, which is problematic. But secondly, no one teaches you how to be a great leader or a great manager. Some people have some natural skills for sure. But even then, the majority of people need to learn that skill, and anyone can learn that skill, which is really great. But no one thinks to invest time, energy, even money into developing their leadership skills, especially as business owners. And I think we have this tendency to assume that it should come naturally to us, and it doesn't. And that's totally fine. And it is a skill we need to develop, just like all the other skills we have to develop when we're running a business.
100%. And look, I even know from my own firsthand experience, starting in corporate, I had some horrible experiences with managers and leaders. And I had this throwaway line that I'm like, I never want to be a manager because I thought that's what a manager had to be.
Yeah.
And I brought that into my business. And when I started to understand it more, I love the leadership aspect. I don't like the nitty-gritty details of the people management. Thank God I've got a COO now, Nadia, who
Yes.
handles a lot of that kind of stuff. But I think that's probably a lot of people's beliefs. They've been jaded through a bad manager or a bad leader that they've observed, and they think that that's what leadership looks like. Do you see that quite often?
Definitely. I think a lot of business owners feel they have to step into a certain persona when they're leading people or doing the management part of the business. And it feels uncomfortable to them because it's not natural and they are just modeling behavior that they've seen in their experience. And the reality is you get to choose how you lead, and all of us have different styles of leadership and different strengths and weaknesses there. And when we stop trying to be someone else and actually start to try and be the leader that we naturally are and do some development there, it becomes a whole lot easier and more enjoyable as well. But I definitely see people trying to be someone that they're not.
I get you. And I think that is just exacerbated by the lack of structure that they have in
Mhm.
terms of this, which just perpetuates the issue. So let's
Mm,
talk big picture here, Kristy-Lee, in terms of the philosophy of recruitment and HR.
mm.
In your experience observing and working with small business owners, where do they get it wrong the most in terms of let's start with the recruitment piece.
Look, the biggest challenge is just not knowing how to discern who is the right person for their team. And it generally comes down to clarity, to be honest. They're
Mm,
not 100% clear on exactly what skills they need in the role or what type of person's going to fit best. And without that clarity, when you then go to the market and say, hey, we're looking to hire someone, you're going to get all sorts of people apply, which makes it then really difficult to whittle that down to who the right person is for the role. So I think clarity is a real issue, and being clear about what you need in the role and in the person, and then knowing how to then look at people to see whether they do have those skills. Because I think our tendency as human beings generally is to want to see the best in people and to sort of pull out the best in people. And so we look for opportunities where this person would be great for our team,
mm.
rather than looking at, does this person fit the exact criteria that I need? And so we end up, as a result, making hiring decisions that aren't perfect for the business, and that has a real flow-on effect, whether they become toxic or negative, or it's a cultural issue, or it's a skills issue. They're never going to work out long term. And then we end up chasing our tail, or we end up with that yo-yoing situation where the team grows a bit, then shrinks a bit. And it feels like a cycle we can kind of never get out of. So I think with the recruitment piece, it's the key issue is we hire the wrong people, but there's a whole range of back issues there around not being clear about what we need, not knowing how to sort of do that recruitment piece well, how to interview effectively, what checks and measures to do to make sure we get it right as well.
It makes so much sense. And I remember when I first started my business, that was my recurring mistake. I would
Mm.
hire good people and then create a role for them, as opposed to getting clear on the role that I
Yeah.
needed in the business and then finding the perfect person to fit.
Yeah.
And I think it just comes down to we see the potential in people, right? And I think
Yeah.
particularly when you are an entrepreneur, I certainly I see things for their potential and what they could be. And in some cases, you end up with these kind of fixer-upper projects,
Yeah.
so to speak. And,
That happens a
and
lot.
like, yeah, it makes me feel a little bit better for all of my past mistakes.
Yeah.
So, what's the first step? Like, how do you ensure that you get clear on what the business actually needs in the next hire before you actually go to market?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's about stepping away and taking a bit of a time, or at least a moment, to get sort of clear and to really think about the business structure. So I start at a structural level when I'm doing that initial planning. And sometimes as we grow our businesses, we tend to, and I said this term yesterday to your group, Frankenstein the team together, not very well intentionally, but just a bit of this and a bit of that and kind of gluing it together, and that creates problems. So the best place to start is actually to start thinking about, what does the ideal structure for my business look like? What sort of resources do I need? And that applies whether you're hiring your first VA or you're up to your 50th team member. If you don't have that right sort of planned structure, you're going to end up hiring again a sort of mismatched role. It may be the right skill set, but it may not just fit perfectly. So taking a zoom out, an exercise that I often recommend is one I call the clean slate exercise. It's purely an exercise in planning out your ideal structure, but it does involve taking a moment to think, well, if I got to start again, what would the ideal structure look like? So you can actually start building towards that. And that's where I always begin, because then the roles become really clear doing that exercise.
It makes so much sense. And it's interesting. Our experience around hiring shifted when we started doing an exercise like this. We
Yes.
created our current organizational chart so we could see exactly what seat everyone was on the bus.
Mm-hmm.
We worked out whether they were on the right seat of the bus or whether they should
Yes.
be on the bus in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
And then we started creating a forecasted org chart of, okay, what are the roles that we're going to need based on the growth that
Yeah.
we want to facilitate and the outcomes that we want in our business. And once you have that, it's so objective, right? It becomes night and day of the role that you need to fill and what that looks like.
Yeah,
And
that clarity that
really
you get from
powerful.
doing those kind of activities is just makes such a difference. And it actually makes things easier for you. It kind of takes that mental load off because your path forward is really clear.
Makes sense. So I think the next part is really advertising for the role. Now, our
Mm,
most common complaint, and we experience this in our business, many of our clients experience this, is that we are in a almost full employment market where finding
yep,
good talent is very hard. And frankly, good people are already employed. It's not like
yep.
they're sitting around twiddling their thumbs watching daytime telly.
No.
So, how do we win the war of attracting high performance talent in this really crowded market space?
It is. It's really tough. I mean, there's good news on the horizon. We're expecting a little shift in that in 2024, but right now it is tough. And I got this experience firsthand when I actually started my career in recruitment, because I started recruiting in Sydney at the time that the Olympics were about to be on in Sydney. You
Okay.
could not have had a tighter recruitment market if you tried at that moment. And we're seeing something very similar now, where unemployment rates are very low and anyone who's any good is employed. So you really need to make a case for them to join your team. And the way I see it is recruitment and seeking staff is a marketing activity. Just
Mm,
like you go to the market to get new customers and you spend hours and thousands of dollars on creating the best possible website and best possible marketing collateral, we all think that's a no-brainer in business and we invest heavily there, but we don't treat our recruitment campaigns the same. We think just like a very average ad on our socials or on LinkedIn or on Seek or any of the job boards is enough. And in this market, it's absolutely not enough. In fact, you're basically throwing money at the wall by doing it that way. So you've got to create basically a marketing campaign with your recruitment advertising. You've got to put content out there that is appealing, that is attracting the right people. You've got to be really clear on who you're trying to attract as well. You'll be very targeted. And you've got to create a reason for them to even apply or even come and chat to you. And
mm,
that's about really understanding what your business can offer the best employee as opposed to your competition. And the good news is it's not all about salary these days. Salaries are still important. And yes, they're being pushed high because of inflation and lots of other issues. But it's about more than that. And a lot of employees actually would prefer to work for small business than larger businesses because they can contribute more. And also, they want to be somewhere that they can feel they can make a difference and be part of something bigger. And small businesses are generally much better at offering that opportunity. So you've got to be able to craft a message that tells your perfect candidate that, hey, this is what we're all about. And if you can tell them, show them visually, video, all that kind of content is really appealing. So really changing up how we think about our hiring campaigns is the key.
makes a lot of sense. And I guess one of my biggest bugbears, because I look on these platforms, Seek and Indeed and whatnot, just to see what our competitors are
Yeah.
advertising. And there's so many cliches in terms of these job ads, right? That we've got great culture and do you want a fun and vibrant environment to work in where we work hard and play hard and all of these just
Yeah.
throwaway lines that everyone uses.
Yeah.
Is that the way to do it, or is there a better way to position yourself to stand out from the crowd?
Oh, look, I think don't use the cliches for sure. I think they're just overrun. And yes, I see a lot of them. Friendly team. Well, I would hope you've got a friendly team. Like it's really obvious stuff. So you want to use language that is true to your business culture because that will actually attract people that want to join that kind of culture. It will also repel people that aren't interested in that culture. So it has a twofold approach. So language is really important, but it's got to be reflective of the truth because if you put language in there that is not reflective of your culture, they're going to turn up for the interview and think, where even am I? So definitely language is important. I love to use visuals and video content as well to show, not tell, because we've all had the experience where we've read something, whether it's on an advertisement or in a job ad or anywhere else, and then the reality is not quite the same as what the words are telling us. If you can visually show your team in your advertising or on your careers page on your website, it gives people a sense of your culture. And that's really handy in helping them connect because you do want to make the process sticky. And even better than that is really creative use of video content. And I've seen some businesses do this brilliantly well on their website where they're interviewing some of the team, showing the team working in the warehouse or delivering the product. And it just gives a feel for the culture. And that tells people, these are people like me. I want to work with these kind of people. They're going to be much more invested in their application based on that knowledge. They already feel like they know you. So that kind of content can be really powerful and not very many people are doing it. So you've got an advantage if you can lean into that.
Beautiful. Love it. Fantastic. That's great. So let's assume we've got that down pat. We now start getting into the interview process. Are there any kind of tips that you could provide in terms of how to structure and vet the right people through that interview process?
Interviews are such an important part, and they're part art and part skill. In terms of, it's like an art and science combination, really. But having a really good range of questions is important, and really thinking clearly about why you're asking particular questions, because just like we were discussing earlier, when we're asking interview questions, we're often basing it off our own experience at attending interviews or seeing what others have done. And so we're asking questions without really any clear intention behind them. You've only got maybe half an hour to an hour with a candidate at an interview. So that's high quality time that you want to be making sure you're milking the most out of. So crafting really compelling questions. And I think most importantly, walking into every interview curious, really wanting to learn about this person and not being afraid to ask follow-up questions and dig a little deeper, especially if you've got a red flag, but also if you're interested in, I'm curious about that, dig a little deeper. Don't just take that first answer, because the quality of your questions, of course, determines the quality of the output you get from the interview. And if you walk into an interview genuinely curious with the right questions crafted, you will have a very good idea by the end of that interview whether this is the right person for you.
And should those questions be the same in every single interview, or should you be adjusting them depending on the candidate?
Yeah, that's a great question. I do a twofold approach. So I have a consistent list of questions when I'm recruiting for a role that I will ask every candidate. And they are questions about obviously the logistics of the role, times, those kind of things. Also, some specific behavioral based questions, asking them to draw on their experience, and they'll be consistent. I'll ask those the same for everyone. And then I have another part of the interview where I'm going through their resume and looking to pick up on different patterns of behavior and other elements. And that will be different for every applicant. So I mix those two together when I'm interviewing.
Makes sense. Great. Beautiful. And I think for me in the past, I've just winged it and asked
Yeah.
questions and whatever I think of at the spot. And it doesn't give you a lot of consistency, does it? You need to have the ability to kind of objectively compare those candidates and obviously then have specific questions that may apply to that individual. So I think that makes a lot of sense.
Mm,
So I think the next biggest objection that we get from our clients is obviously being small business owners. Cash flow is not always free flowing.
yeah.
Hiring is always going to be one of the most significant investments that we will make.
Hmm.
And the common challenge that we observe is how do we get people on ramped and up to KPI as quickly as possible and ensure that they're actually going to be delivering value to the business? Now, there's obviously a number of components to this, but in
Mm.
your experience, what's the best way to get people indoctrinated up to KPI and actually be able to measure that they are the right person for the role, that we've made a good decision?
Yeah. Look, great onboarding strategies are the way to go here. And onboarding is something, especially in small business, that we think, oh, it's not really for us, it's more for big businesses. Or we give someone the policy manual and say, here, read this, that's your onboarding.
Mm.
They've got to read the policy manual, right? We get that, but that is not onboarding. Onboarding is the process of getting someone to their full capacity as quickly as possible and having them feel comfortable, like they're part of the furniture almost. The quicker you can do that, the quicker you're in a position to firstly assess them fully, but also the quicker they're productive and actually making money for your business. So putting a big focus on that is really important. What I see a lot of business owners do is just forgetting about that, just saying, here's your seat, well, there's your workstation, off you go. And that really is the worst thing you can do, because they're feeling disengaged and disconnected. They're going to spend more time faffing about trying to figure out where things are or what to do. And, obviously new to a role, new to a business, maybe not feeling confident to ask questions or seek help. So that's going to extend the process. Where if you have a much more hands-on and deliberate onboarding strategy, you'll get someone up to speed much more quickly. And I start that the day they accept the offer. Because if they already walk in feeling like they're part of the family and know, okay, I'm going to be starting here, this is what I'm going to be doing, they have some idea what's happening, that alleviates the whole first week of, not really knowing what's going on. So the sooner you can get that bedded in, the better. So they're comfortable with the work environment, they're comfortable with the team and with their role and where it fits in, then they're going to be ready to really start firing.
Makes a lot of sense. Fantastic. And I guess the other part to this is that I know I've made this mistake before, and many small business owners have, is that we tend to give underperforming team members the benefit of the doubt for too long. And it's
Mm-hmm.
only in hindsight that we're like, that person was underperforming. I probably should have moved them on or done something about it sooner.
Yeah.
So, how do we better objectively assess performance and performance manage to either get people up to the expectation or out of the business if they're not a good fit?
Yeah, I think what we do is delay the conversations because they're uncomfortable and because they're a bit tricky to have. And I get it, they're not fun to have, but things are never going to get better on their own if you've got a performance issue. So it comes back to having really clear expectations and having communicated those. And as leaders and business owners, we do sometimes fall down in that capacity. We have an expectation in our mind. Unfortunately, they can't read our minds. So we need to be explicit in what we expect. A position description is an excellent tool for that, so that there's a clear list of responsibilities and duties and all those kinds of things. Even better is some key performance indicators. If we've got those really clear, then there's no grey area. It is, this is what's expected by this deadline. This is what success looks like. And then we know we can measure directly against that. But a position description is a great place to start. If you don't have that, at the very least, have clearly communicated what your expectations are and have it in writing, ideally. That way you've got a measurement tool and you can assess, at a monthly catch up or at a quarterly review, are we meeting these expectations? I'm a big fan of doing performance reviews quarterly in the current environment because I think a year, which is the old school way of doing it, is too long. It's we can't remember what happened 11 and a half months ago. So our team aren't going to be able to either. So quarterly reviews mean that you're reviewing more often, which can be a great tool, but also use the probationary period for what it's for assessing their suitability for the role. If you take your eyes off that and you need to terminate post probation, it is a lot more difficult. So use that probationary period wisely. You want to set people up for success, but you do want to measure their performance as well and make sure that, provided they've got everything they need to succeed, if they're not succeeding, you may need to performance manage, and nipping it in the bud is a good idea.
Right. This is super valuable. And I know this is just stuff that most business owners don't know how to do, don't have a framework for, and just don't address early enough because it is awkward, right? Particularly when you
Yes.
don't have a structure. So it just exacerbates the issues. So
Mm.
I'm sure there's people that are listening and watching this that are like, okay, I need all of this stuff. So with a typical client of yours,
Yeah.
of everything we've spoken about, what do you do and how do you support them as part of this whole HR and recruitment process?
Yeah, so we work with businesses similar size to a lot of the businesses that you work with who have team but aren't of that size to need in-house or internal HR. And really, we are here to support them in ensuring they're compliant and have the sounding board and support they need to make great decisions. So we work with people in our People Powered HR membership, which is our sort of really easily accessible subscription option where they've got lots of templates and resources. And I also work with people in my bespoke mentoring and coaching program where I'm working with them much more closely on a daily basis to help them really hone those boss skills, because like I said, it's not an area we are taught, and we kind of think that we should be able to just wing it. But like everything else, we need to learn it. So I'll start with chatting to someone about exactly where they're at with their growth, what their current pain points are, and then look at how we can best support them to make sure that, yes, they've got all the technical compliance stuff in place, but more importantly, that they're developing those skills as a leader that we all need in business.
Beautiful. Fantastic. I think all businesses need to be doing this. I see so
Mm,
many people neglecting it, and
yeah,
it can get them into some serious hot water if they don't get this right. And
yeah.
not just from a compliance standpoint, which obviously we want to avoid, but just from a business growth and sustainability standpoint. For all of us in service businesses, we are in the people business,
Mhm.
and it's so important that we've got this HR strategy sorted because it could be the difference between growth and not.
Absolutely. And the reality is, you can't grow a business that is successful by all the financial measures, but also gives you any sense of freedom without a team. You can do it on your own, for sure. You can have a super successful business, but you'll be working night and day and there'll be no freedom for you. And I know
Yes.
you and I are both aligned on giving business owners freedom from their businesses. So a team is important in that, and it can't be just a bum on a seat. You need the right people in the right roles at the right time to really support that business growth. And so team is essential to giving you that success and freedom.
Yes, definitely. So if anybody's watched or listened to this, Kristy-Lee, and they want to get in touch with you, how are they best to reach out and connect?
Yeah, fantastic. You can reach out to me on any of the socials, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram, or the website, peoplepoweredbusiness.com.au. And you can find the podcast and all those resources there to grab.
Beautiful. Awesome. This has been super valuable. We've even got even more gold nuggets than we picked up on yesterday. So I got a collection of goodies to take away, and I know our community does as well. So, Matt, I appreciate you taking the time to share your wisdom. And guys, remember, a good idea in theory remains exactly that, just a good idea until you put it into practice. So take some of these pearls of wisdom, take action on it. And if it's not in your capability, make sure you get support from Kristy-Lee and the team. Reach out, have a conversation, see how they can help, and look forward to catching you again on the next episode. Kristy-Lee, thanks again, and we'll chat to you soon.
Thanks so much, Jackson. Great to be with you.